All right, hey everybody. So you are now in the unit where you are comparing slopes, and we'll be comparing slopes from tables. This is a table, an equation. So y equals 6x, like y equals mx plus b. That's the equation. Here our b is 0. There is no b. And graphs, okay? So there are 9 problems on here, and so you will be doing all 9, but we are going to do 1 and 4 together. 1 and 4 together. Okay, so let's get started on number 1. So let's read our directions first, but before you do that, make sure you put your name on the paper. So let's look at question or the directions say. The directions say that in each problem, determine which situation has the greatest rate of change. And we know rate of change means slope. And which situation has the smallest rate of change. State what the rate of change or slope is in both cases. Write a full solution. So we're going to say which one has the greater rate of change and which one does not. So we've already learned how to find slope from a table. We've learned how to find slope from an equation. And we know how to find slope from a graph. So I just have to find the slope of each and see which one is bigger. So if we're looking at this table with CJ, to find the slope from a table, y'all know that we have to find what the difference in y's are and what the difference in x is. So to go from 0 to 2, I have to add 2, right? I have to add 2. To go from 0 to 13, I have to add 13. So my slope will be this number, that y over x. Slope is always going to be y over x. So my y is 13, or my change in y is 13, and my change in x is 2. 13 over 2. Cool. For Holland, for an equation, it's real easy. So we know that an equation is y equals mx plus b, right? And m is the slope. So that means any number in front of x is going to be the slope. In this case, 6 is in front of the x, so my slope is 6. So for Holland, the slope is 6. Now let's look at Brandon. Brandon, we have a graph. So in this situation, we'd have to create a slope triangle. And to do that, we have to choose 2 points. 2 points on the graph. Dos. 2. The first one I'm going to choose is the origin. All these start at the origin, so they're considered proportional relationships. If they don't start at the origin, they are not proportional relationships. So I'm going to choose this one. The next point I choose has to be on one of the corners of these rectangle square things, right? It has to be on the corner of one of these grids. So if I were to choose, okay, this is not on a corner, that's not on a corner. The line has to be on the corner. Let me clarify. This line has to touch the corner. So in none of these instances here, does it touch a corner? But then I get here, at this point, I don't know if y'all see it, at this point here, it touches the corner, so I can use that. Now I can create a triangle. So I have to create a right triangle. Some of us just make any kind of triangle. No, it has to be a right triangle. So you're going to go up and to the right, down to the left, whichever way it works for you. But it has to be a right triangle. So in this case, it can look like this. So you see, it's a right triangle. It has a corner. If your triangle looks like an equilateral, that is not correct, all right? So now we know that slope is rise over run, so I have to count my rise. And this is going by ones, so I can count each box as 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So my rise is 7. My run is, just 1. 1. So that means my slope for Brandon is 7. So all these are written as whole numbers. So we said CJ's slope was 13 over 2. Holland was 6. Brandon was 7. Already we know that Brandon is greater than Holland, right? But 13 over 2, we have to get that as maybe like a fraction or a mixed number to help us compare. Usually we don't write slope as a mixed number, but in this case we will, just to see how it compares with 6 and 7. So this as a mixed number, 13 divided by 2, it can go in 6 times. So 6 times 2 is 12. 13 minus 12 is 1 over 2. All right. If you don't get that, don't worry about it. You have a calculator. You can just type in 13 over 2, and it should give you 16 and 1/2 or 6.5. So we know this is the biggest slope. So Brandon ran the fastest. Brandon ran fastest. And CJ, or not CJ, Holland ran slowest. That's how we interpret it, because this is speed as they run a race. And so we can see Brandon is going 7 miles per hour versus Holland 6 miles per hour. All right, so now let's look at number 4. All right, so we compare the slopes. So let's look at number 4. I'm only doing number 4 because the graph is interesting and it might confuse you a little bit. So below are representations of Brandon, Omar, and Malika's speed as they read. So it's how fast they're reading is what these graphs, the equations, and the table are representing. So in this case, X is minutes, Y is words. So we do the same thing to find the slope for Braden. I'm sorry, Braden, not Brandon. For Braden. So you figure out, okay, how do I go from 0 to 3? I have to add 3. How do I go from 0 to 180? I have to add 180. So we know my slope is going to be Y over X, right? So that's 180 over 3. My change in Y is 180. We see that's Y words. And my change in X is 3. 180 over 3. I know 18 divided by 3 is 6. And then we bring the 0. So 60. 180 divided by 3 is 60. So that slope is 60. So 60 words per minute. 60 words per minute is what that represents. So let's look at Omar. Omar, we already know whatever's in front of the X is going to be the slope. So Omar is at 100 words per minute. Now let's look at Malika. Malika's interesting. Let me see if I can zoom in. So let's look at Malika. We have to choose 2 points, right? We have to create a slope triangle. So I can choose this point right here, the origin. If it starts at the origin, it's a proportional relationship. And I have to choose another one. So I can't choose this point. It's not at the corner. Can't choose that. Can't choose that. I can't choose this point, but I can choose this point. Okay? Now I create my slope triangle. It has to be a right triangle. So my rise, it's rise over run, right? You would think that the rise is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but it's not. As you can see, my boxes are going by 20 each time. 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 120. So each box represents 20. And since there's 6 boxes, I know my rise is 120. I'm going from 0 to 120. Each box represents 20, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 120. And this box is 1. All right, so run is 1. So 120 over 1. So Malika reads 120 words per minute. So Malika reads the fastest. And who reads the slowest? Let me back up. Who reads the slowest? Braden. Braden reads the slowest. Because Malika goes 120 words per minute and Braden was just 60 words per minute. All right, so attempt the rest on your own.